clouds, powdery dust.
Houston, we've had a problem.
But instead of describing a lunar landscape, Lovell finds himself halfway to the moon, talking with Mission Control about his dying command module.
Main B, bus undervolt. Roger, main B undervolt. Stand by 13, we're looking at it.
Electrical power is disrupted, and readings in the capsule and at Mission Control don't jibe. Then Lovell sees something out his window.
It looks to me, looking out the hatch, that we are venting something. We are venting something out into space.
The explosion of an oxygen tank in the service module has damaged several key systems. The astronauts must scour 24 instruments, 40 alarm indicators, 71 lights, and 566 switches to regain control of their spacecraft.
With the loss of oxygen, because we used oxygen to produce electricity, all of our electrical power would quit. And when that happened, because we controlled our engine by means of electrical power, we'd lose the entire propulsion system. And so, essentially, it took a while for all that to sink in. That it dawned on me that we were in very serious trouble.
The crew of Apollo 13 never gets the chance to land on the moon. They can only slingshot around it and, with their lunar module Aquarius as their lifeboat, hope to make their way safely back to Earth.
We had to invent ways to navigate. We had to find ways to stretch the electrical power. Our crew was suffocating. We had to find ways to remove the carbon dioxide so the crew wouldn't suffer from CO2 poisoning.
We never had discussed the possibility of not surviving or getting back to the Earth. It was probably in all of our minds, but we were working hard to figure out what we had to work with and what we had to do to get back.
The command module, shut down and unheated for 3 days, would now have to be restarted. Condensation is everywhere.
The whole instrument panel was covered with water, and of course I knew that there was water probably behind the panel on all the wiring harnesses, and so we worried about electric shorts. We were virtually going down rows and pushing in circuit breakers. We figured the best we could do is we started down the row and started smelling. You could smell an electric short. We'd back up, pull something out, and hope we could quickly isolate which was the culprit.
But there are no shorts, due perhaps to the capsule redesign after the Apollo 1 fire. Sealing the electrical connections also means they're now waterproof for landing.
Farewell, Aquarius. We thank you.
After its harrowing 6-day ordeal, Apollo 13 safely splashes down in the Pacific. The moon landing mission may have failed, but Flight Director Gene Kranz remembers it as the space team's finest hour.
NASA, contractor, people out in subcontractors, the test facilities, and individuals. It was really amazing to be at the point of the spear and watch this team perform basically against all odds and to come up with solutions that we had never trained or thought about before.
While just getting to the moon can prove difficult, landing on its dusty, boulder-strewn, cratered surface is even more problematic. A lunar lander must maneuver like a helicopter, with its rotors replaced by rocket engines. Training with the LEM in Earth's atmosphere is impossible, so the Lunar Lander Research Vehicle is used. The Apollo astronauts call it the flying bedstead. To simulate the 1/6 gravity of the moon, the LLRV's central jet engine supports most of the vehicle's weight. But flying the LLRV is dangerous. On the afternoon of May 6, 1968, the craft nearly kills Neil Armstrong. Astronaut Bill Anders had flown the same vehicle just hours earlier.
The thing flamed out. The attitude control system ran out of fuel, and so Neil was flopping around there and just managed to get out of it. Well, he was very lucky because this thing was just on its main engine with no attitude control, and it was getting close to the ground, and it just leveled, kind of rolled out, and Neil looked like he came out of the fireball. And it didn't look like he went back into the fireball with his parachute, but he landed just beyond.
4 of these earthbound trainers are used. 3 will crash, but the actual lunar modules land safely every time.
There's good stuff. Okay, man, looking great. 60 seconds. 40 feet. 3 feet per second.
America's first astronaut, Alan Shepard, returns to spaceflight 10 years later to command Apollo 14's Lem and Terry's to a skillful set-down.
We're on the surface. Okay, we made it to landing.
Apollo 14 is on the moon almost 34 hours. About a third of that time is spent moonwalking in the lunar highlands.
Certainly the Fra Mauro area where we landed was an interesting place, and with far more relief up and down of the terrain than the earlier flights, which also made the navigation a little more difficult. Particularly, it was kind of like wandering around in the sand dunes, and one sand dune looks about like the other. So finding our landmarks that the geologists wanted us to find as we did our traverse on foot to Cone Crater was difficult.
I'm going to try a little sand trap shot here.
But Shepard manages a few seconds to become not only America's first man in space, but also its first golfer.
Miles and miles and miles.
2 miles is all the Apollo 14 astronauts are able to walk during their 2 EVAs. But the next mission will have wheels.
This is really a rock and rollin' ride, isn't it? That's one small step for man. Beautiful, beautiful. Isn't that something?
I was in Orlando, in my parents' house, and as the first pictures came through, we were, of course, all just very enthusiastic and enthralled with what was happening.
One giant leap for mankind.